Liam Frank had no business being at the Meridian Gala. He knew it. The chandeliers knew it. The man who looked at his rented tuxedo and then looked away definitely knew it. He was a structural engineer from Queens with calloused hands, a 7-year-old daughter who believed broccoli was a personal attack, and a ticket he'd inherited at 4 p.m. from a colleague whose wife had gone into labor. He was standing in the corner of the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom, holding a champagne flute he was afraid to drink from, counting the minutes until he could leave. Then he heard the laughter. Not the warm kind. The kind that has teeth. Across the room, 3 men in expensive suits had formed a loose circle around a woman standing alone near the bar. She was composed. Navy dress. Dark hair. Glass of sparkling water, not champagne. She looked like someone who was used to being the most powerful person in the room, and was quietly choosing not to say so. They didn't know that. "Is someone's assistant lost?" one of them said, and the others laughed like it was clever. Her hand tightened around her glass. Just slightly. Just enough for Liam to see. He didn't think so. He just walked over, put on the most natural smile of his life, and said 4 words he had absolutely no right to say. "There you are, sweetheart." He told those men she was his wife. He didn't know her name. He didn't know she was worth $300 million. He didn't know that by tomorrow morning, she would be sitting across from him in a 41st floor office asking him sincerely, calmly, like it was the most logical thing in the world to actually marry her. All he knew, in that moment, was that it was wrong to walk away. That one decision changed everything. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness and unseen connections that change lives, help motivate us to post more by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. Liam Frank had no business being at the Meridian Gala. That was the truth, plain and simple. The annual charity event at the Plaza Hotel in New York City was a universe built for people who wore their wealth like a second skin, old money in tailored tuxedos, new money in designer gowns, and the kind of people whose names appeared on buildings. Liam's name appeared on exactly one thing, the lease agreement for his 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. He was 34 years old. A structural engineer with a modest firm, a single father to a 7-year-old daughter named Gracie who currently believed that bedtime was a government conspiracy. He had calloused hands from weekend repair projects, coffee stains that never quite left his second-best shirts, and a laugh that was too loud for polite rooms. He was here tonight because his colleague, Derek, had handed him the ticket at 4 p.m. with the words, "My wife went into labor early. You go. There's an open bar." And so here Liam stood, in a rented tuxedo that fit almost correctly, holding a champagne flute he was afraid to drink from, not because of the alcohol, but because everything in this room felt fragile and expensive and quietly hostile to people like him. He had tucked himself near the far end of the ballroom, beside an arrangement of white orchids the size of small children, watching the crowd with the detached curiosity of a man who had wandered into the wrong film. Chandeliers dripped golden light over hundreds of polished faces. A string quartet played something classical and smug in the corner. Outside, Manhattan hummed its relentless, indifferent song. He was calculating how soon he could leave without it being rude, to no one in particular, since he knew no one when he heard the laughter. Not the good kind. She was standing near the bar, and she was alone. That was the first thing Liam noticed. In a room where everyone arrived armored in alliances, a spouse on the arm, a business partner at the elbow, an assistant hovering 3 steps behind, this woman stood in a quiet bubble of solitude. She wore a deep navy dress, understated against the room's theatrical glamour. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly. She held a glass of sparkling water, not champagne. She looked, Liam thought, like someone who was used to being the most important person in any room and was currently choosing to pretend she wasn't. He didn't know who she was. He would learn later. What he knew right now was that 3 men had formed a loose circle near her, and they were laughing. Liam was too far away to catch every word, but proximity and instinct closed the gap quickly. He drifted closer, the way you drift toward something wrong, not rushing, not yet certain, but unable to stop yourself. Walked in without a +1, darling, that's all I'm saying. Someone's assistant, clearly. Did you check if she's catering? Sweetie, this section is reserved. Do you need directions to the coat check? The laughter again, wet and satisfied, the laughter of men who had never once been made to feel small, and so had no idea what it cost. The woman's expression hadn't changed. That was what struck Liam most. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't wounded in any visible way. Her face was composed, almost serene, like a lake so still you couldn't tell how deep it ran. But her hand around the glass had tightened. Just slightly. A white-knuckled inch of truth. Liam's jaw tightened. He thought of Gracie. He always thought of Gracie. He thought of the kind of world he was raising her into, and the kind of men she would one day have to navigate, and something hot and certain moved through his chest. He straightened his rented jacket. He walked over. He did not plan it. That was important. There was no strategy, no calculation, just the honest momentum of a man who had been raised to understand that doing nothing was itself a choice. He stepped smoothly into the circle, close enough that his presence registered, and directed a warm, convincing smile at the woman, the kind of smile a man uses when he's spotted someone he loves across a crowded room. "There you are," he said. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The woman turned to him. Her eyes were dark and sharp, and for one terrible second Liam thought she was going to say, "I have never seen you before in my life." She didn't. Something flickered in her expression, quick as a match being struck, and she read the situation with an intelligence so fast it was almost frightening. In less than 2 seconds, she had understood what he was doing and decided to let him do it. "Sorry," she said smoothly, her voice low and composed. "I got turned around. This room is enormous." Liam put his hand gently at her elbow, respectful, light, the touch of a man who knows where the line is, and turned to face the three men with a pleasant, utterly unbothered expression. "Gentlemen," he said. "I hope you've been keeping my wife company. She has a habit of slipping away from me at these things." The word wife landed in the circle like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples moved outward. One of the men, heavy-jowled, red-faced from too much champagne and too many years of being agreed with, straightened slightly. "Your wife?" "Anne," Liam said, glancing at her with easy familiarity, pulling her name from the small placard on the glass of water she'd been given at the welcome table. He'd caught it in his periphery without knowing he would need it. "And Frank." "My wife." A beat. The woman beside him did not hesitate. "Liam always worries I'll wander off," she said pleasantly. "Old habit from our first gala. I spent 20 minutes talking to a floor manager thinking he was a senator." Light laughter. Warm. Disarming. The kind of laughter that made the other men's laughter, moments before, feel suddenly shabby by comparison. The heaviest of the three men looked between them, recalibrating. Something uncertain moved behind his eyes. "Forgive us," he said, with the awkward grace of a man who had realized, too late, that he had made an error. "We were just—" "Don't worry about it," Liam said easily, and he meant it. There was no cruelty in his voice, no savoring of the moment. Just a door being closed, firmly and without drama. "Enjoy your evening." He guided and gently away, and they walked together toward the far side of the ballroom, past the white orchids, toward the tall windows overlooking Fifth Avenue. They didn't speak until they were out of earshot. When they stopped, she turned to face him. Close up, she was striking in a way that had nothing to do with the room's conventional beauty. There was precision to her face, and something behind her eyes that reminded Liam of the feeling you get standing at the edge of something vast, a canyon, an ocean, a decision you can't undo. "That was," she said carefully, "either the kindest or the strangest thing a stranger has ever done for me." "Probably both," Liam said honestly. A pause. Then she did something he didn't expect. She laughed. Not the polished, social laugh she'd deployed moments before, but a real one, brief and genuine, a laugh that slipped out before she could decide whether to let it. "I'm in Brandon," she said. He shook her hand. "Liam Frank. And I should probably apologize for using your first name without permission and for inventing a marriage." "And Frank," she said, with a faint smile. "You made me the wife of a famous diarist." I panicked. "You didn't look like you panicked." "I'm a structural engineer. We're trained to look calm while everything is falling apart." She studied him, not rudely, but with the focused attention of someone who was used to assessing things quickly and accurately. "You really didn't know who I was?" It wasn't quite a question. Should I? Most people in this room would say yes. I'm not most people in this room. I'm actually not sure I belong in this room at all. I have a rented tuxedo and a friend who went into labor. Another laugh. This one lasted longer. They talked for an hour. Not about business. Not about the event or the cause or the guest list. They talked the way people sometimes talk when the context strips away, about his daughter Gracie, who had recently decided that all vegetables were enemy food. About the way New York looked from the Queensboro Bridge at 6 a.m., which Liam saw often because Gracie had a phase of waking at 5. About the specific exhaustion of loving someone so completely that you organize your entire internal world around their happiness, and wouldn't change it for anything. And Brandon, Liam would learn the next morning when he Googled her name on his phone over a bowl of cereal, was the CEO of Brandon Capital Group, one of the most powerful private equity firms on the East Coast. Her net worth was listed in the hundreds of millions. She had been on the cover of Forbes, Business Insider, and 3 other publications in the last 2 years. She had built her company from a boutique investment consultancy into a financial institution of considerable weight, entirely within a decade. At the gala, she had told him none of this. She had listened to him talk about Grace's ongoing war against broccoli, and she had told him about the view from her office on the 41st floor, which she never tired of, and the way Manhattan looked in January when the light went pale and everything seemed to hold its breath. When they parted at the end of the evening, she shook his hand again. "Thank you, Liam Frank," she said. "For the rescue." Anytime, he said a thing people say without meaning, and he meant completely. He went home, paid the babysitter, checked on Gracie, asleep and formidably peaceful, and forgot to look up the woman's name until morning. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Liam was at the kitchen table. Gracie was at school. He was on his second coffee, still in his grey sweatshirt, staring at the in Brandon Wikipedia page on his phone with the specific expression of a man who has discovered that the woman he spent an hour talking about vegetables with is, in fact, extraordinarily powerful. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Good morning." Her voice was different on the phone, cleaner, more precise, the register of a woman in a professional setting. But the cadence was the same. "It's Anne and Brandon. We met last night." "I know," he said. "I Googled you this morning." And I'm having a very confusing second coffee." A pause. Then warmly, "I need to speak with you. Are you free today?" He almost laughed. "I'm a structural engineer in Queens who got handed a last-minute gala ticket. I'm free." She sent a car. He almost didn't get in. But Gracie had once told him with the philosophical authority of a 7-year-old in mismatched socks. "That scared means something interesting is happening, Daddy." He had written it on a post-it note and stuck it to the fridge. He got in the car. Her office was on the 41st floor, exactly as she described. The view was extraordinary. The January light was pale and still, and Manhattan held its breath below them, exactly as she'd said. She was behind her desk when he entered, composed, professional, the full weight of who she was settled comfortably around her shoulders. But she stood when he came in, and that was a thing Liam noticed, and would remember. "Sit down," she said. "Please." He sat a day. She remained standing for a moment and then she said the thing that reordered his entire morning. "I want to propose a marriage arrangement." Silence. "I'm sorry," Liam said. "Can you say that again? Slower?" She sat then too, and folded her hands on the desk with the calm of someone who had rehearsed this, thought it through, decided it was rational. "I've been under considerable pressure," she began, "from my board, from certain family stakeholders, and from the nature of my industry which still, in certain circles, views an unmarried woman of my age and profile as either a liability or an ongoing question. Last night, I watched 3 men dismiss me entirely in a room full of my professional peers because I was standing alone. Because I didn't have a husband beside me." Liam said nothing. He was listening the way he listened when something structural was being explained carefully, for the load-bearing parts. "You stepped in," she continued, "without hesitation, without agenda, without making me feel like a problem you were solving. You were natural. Disarming. You didn't treat it as a transaction." She paused. "You're also, and I realize this sounds calculating, but I ask you to hear it fully, exactly the kind of person the arrangement requires. You're not in my industry. You have no stake in my business. You have something real to focus on outside of me." "Gracie," Liam said. "Your daughter, yes." Something shifted in her expression. "I'm not asking for something romantic. I'm asking for a formal arrangement for a legal marriage, if you're willing, for a defined period. There are contracts. There is generous compensation. There are boundaries, clearly drawn." Liam was quiet for a long time. Outside, Manhattan went on being Manhattan. Indifferent. Enormous. Relentlessly itself. "Why me specifically?" he finally said. "You met me for 1 hour. 1 hour is sometimes enough," and said, "to know who a person is. You didn't know who I was. You helped me anyway. That's rarer than you'd think, in my world." Another silence. Then Liam leaned forward slightly, and he looked at her, really looked the way he looked at buildings, at foundations, at the places where the weight was carried. "Anne," he said quietly. I'll be honest with you, because you've been honest with me. I can't promise you a business arrangement. I'm not built that way. I'm a man who makes pancakes on Saturday morning and reads the same picture book 4 times in a row because my daughter hasn't decided she's done with it yet. I don't know your world a beat. But I think, he said, that maybe that's what you just told me you're looking for. And Brandon held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, yes. I think it is. They had coffee that morning, real coffee, not a meeting, not a negotiation, just 2 people sitting across from each other with the strange and tentative energy of something beginning. Nothing was signed that day. But Gracie, when she was told some weeks later that her father had a friend named and who worked in a very tall building, declared that tall buildings were cool, and asked if and had ever dropped anything from the top. And, when told this, laughed the real laugh, the one that slipped out before she could decide. And Liam thought, there it is. There's the thing that doesn't lie. Love, real love, is never a structure you plan. It is the thing that holds after everything else is tested. It is the foundation you find beneath your feet when you thought you were only walking across a floor. He had walked into a gala he didn't belong in, told a lie to protect a stranger, and somehow, in the way that only the truest things happen, stumbled directly into the rest of his life.